Hey everyone, welcome to my Android tutorial video on the Recyclerview. So this is what we're going to be building throughout this tutorial video, and you can see what I have is just a Recyclerview of an image and then a button, and when you click the button it'll say down here invite sent to Smeagol, which is the name. So these are all the Lord of the Rings characters. You got here message Sam, invite sent to Sam. You can see you scroll down and you have more and more characters. So if your app needs to display a scrolling list of elements based on large data sets or data that frequently changes, you should use a Recyclerview. And some of you might already be familiar with displaying lists of data with a list view, but the Recyclerview is much more efficient and advanced than the list view. And what it does is it only creates enough views to fit the current screen. It can do this because it recycles components by keeping them on the screen and simply changing the data shown. So all these are just a image view and a button. And when you're scrolling down, it's basically recycling this one item here, but just changing the data. And so in other words, the Recyclerview only creates as many items as needed to do this. The on-screen portion of the dynamic content, and then a few extra. So there are also a few more of these being created down here, just for if the user scrolls the list, the next element is ready to display. So say down here, you'd be up here, and then you scroll down, Mary might have already been made here, this element, so it's already ready to go. And let me give you a better idea of what these items are real quick. So they're basically just a layout XML file. So you can see within this, all I have right here is an image view and a button. And so these are just going to be repeating throughout the Recyclerview. So you can see here, this is one item, this is another item, and so on. So to start this tutorial, I'm just going to create a new Android project. So I'm going to do File, New Project, and we're just going to choose an empty activity to start. Now what I'm going to name the application, I'm just going to name it Recyclerview Demo, and then just choose the proper save location. And then we're going to be using API 23 as the minimum SDK, and we're using Java. And then just click finish. And so now that your project is loaded, one of the first things that you need to do is you need to download the Recyclerview library. So in other words, you need to add the jar or Android archive file to be able to work with Recyclerview, as it isn't in Android by default. And there are many ways to do this, and one of the best ways is, so you need to add this as an implementation in your dependencies. And one of the easiest ways is, so the Recyclerview is a widget, just like a text view and everything. So if you just search for Recyclerview, you can see this little download icon here. You can click and add this to your dependencies. And you see the Gradle will sync. Then if you click on your build.gradle for your app, you can see that Recyclerview has been added here. However, if this is not an option for you, so what I'm going to show you the other way, so I'm just going to delete this here and sync again. And so the other way to do is these libraries are located in the Android support library, which contains a set of libraries that enable you to add features that are otherwise not part of your standard framework. So for example, the Recyclerview. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to Android support libraries. So go to your favorite web browser. For me, I'm going to go to Google, start a new tab, and type in Android support library. Then what you're going to go down here is you're going to go to support library packages. And one of the first things you should notice is that these are all deprecated. So you can see the word deprecated behind here. And this is because of the migration to Android X. And so deprecated basically means that it's no longer being supported or worked on by Android. It can even be dangerous to use in your application. And so Android X stands for Android Extension Libraries, and it was released on September 1st, 2018. And basically, yeah, Android X is short for Android Extension Libraries. And what it does is provide simplified package names and uses semantic naming. However, even though these are deprecated, you can still use these libraries, but what the better thing to do is just to paste them into your dependencies and then migrate to Android X from there, which I'm going to show you how to do. So scroll down or just type in Recyclerview. You can see down here we have V7. And this used to mean that this is for API 7 and above, but it has become confusing since then, and this is another reason why we changed to Android X. But basically just come down here, you can see the support right here, copy it to the clipboard, go over to your Recyclerview thing, and then paste it in right here. And then of course you can sync. Now you can see, however, this is highlighted in red, and this is because version 28 and below are basically used for Android Pie and below, and so we're not using Android Pie. And so because of this, what we're expected to do is migrate over to Android X. And the easiest way to do that is to go to just Refactor, then migrate to Android X, and then you can back up your project as a zip file. I'm not going to do that because we haven't really done much with it, and just migrate. And then it'll show you down here what the changes are going to be, so that you can see it's going to change this. And so I can just click do Refactor. And you can see now we're Recyclerview from Android X. And also it's highlighted, which means there's probably an update we can do, so change to 1.1. And then sync, and then we have it installed again. And so now that we've got Recyclerview downloaded, what we can do is we can go back to our activity main, and let me just add the UI components here. And so now what we can do is we can add a Recyclerview. So the way I like to do it is I'll go into code. I'm going to delete this text view, and I'll type in Recyclerview. Android X, Recyclerview, Widget, Recyclerview. And then I'll just do match parent and match parent. So as I said previously, Recyclerview is a widget. So you can even see androidx.recyclerview.widget, Recyclerview. So everything that we want in our Recyclerview, all these items will be placed within here, or within our Recyclerview. And the items that we want to place in there, we actually have to create. So these repeating items that we want to create, what we will do is we'll just go over to our resources, and then layout. Then we're going to create a new layout resource file. And you can name it what you want, but I'm going to name it Recyclerview item. And so this right here, this layout that we just made, is the repeating unit. So what we want to repeat, so in my example, you can see I just had an image view and then a button. Whatever you want to repeat, this is what you want to create in here. So if I'm just going to recreate that, I'm just going to do an image view and a button. So I'll just do that real quick. So now I've made my repeating unit, but something that people usually get confused with is you also want to change the height of this layout here. Because for example, if we had this repeating right now, it would be this whole height constantly repeating. And what we have here is just a small height. And so what you would have to do is you would have to make the height, say, wrap content. And now it'll only be this size as opposed to being this whole size. And then I'm also, of course, just going to add a little bit of padding here. So I can go down and find padding right here. Click on it, and I'll just do, say, 10 dp for each. So now we've created the layout for what we want our Recyclerview items to look like, but now we need to use an adapter, which basically takes a collection of Java objects and makes them visible to the Recyclerview. So we've made this repeating item that we want, but we actually need to link it to the Recyclerview. And this is done through something called an adapter. And to make an adapter, you just create a new Java class, and I'm just going to call it my adapter. And so what you can think of the adapter as is something that manages the collection and UI operations. So it manages the collection of these items here. And you'll understand this more as we start to code, but for now just take it as face value. But the way to create an adapter is what you do is you extend the class Recyclerview.adapter. And so, but before we do any of that, what we need to do is we need to create an inner static class, which acts as a view holder. And so a view holder does basically what, as the name suggests, it holds the views. And so our views in this case are the views we placed inside our layout item. So you can see this is what we want to repeat. So we have an image view and we have a button. So these are the views that we want the view holder to actually hold. And the way to create a view holder is, of course, you just declare the class public static class my view holder. And then you need to extend Recyclerview.viewHolder. And so after we've extended this, what we have to implement is create a constructor matching the super, and this is because there is no default constructor provided by this, so we would get an error. What holding basically means is that the images are held in memory for each list item to create or increase efficiency. So what the view holder does is it then populates these view components with information that represents the current position from the adapter collection. So you'll see that these two basically work hand in hand. And the view holder, however, the view holder does is it operates on one row at a time. So in our instance, one row will have an image view, so we can call it image view, and it'll also have a button that we'll just call button. Because each of one of these is going to be held in memory. We have a button and an image view, and then the view holder will work on only one of them at a time. And so we will be calling the myViewHolder class, or creating an object of that within the adapter. And you can see item view here. This is the view right here that we are going to inflate that we will want to pass. And so we'll pass it into this constructor here. And so the reason to do this is because then you can do ImageView equals itemView.findViewById. You can do r.id.iv.pick. And so you can see this item view will represent this view here, which contains this image view that has the ID ivpick. And then you can do the same thing with the button. So you'll do button equals itemView.findViewById r.id.button message. And so now that we've created our view holder, what we need to do is now we need to create our adapter by extending Recyclerview.adapter. And it takes an argument in here, which is of the object type. We will do my adapter because it's a static init class .myViewHolder. And then we implement the methods. can see we have onCreateViewHolder, onBindViewHolder, and getItem. So one of the first methods I'm going to be going over here is right here, onCreateViewHolder, which basically you can see it returns the view holder that we created. So we have my view holder, and you can see we have it down here. And so what you should also notice is that view holder takes an argument or a view argument in its constructor. So you can see right here we have super item view and then view. And so what we need to do in here is we actually need to create a view that we will pass into this my view holder. So instead of returning null, what we would have is return new my view holder, and then we would pass the view in here. And so the view that we actually want is going to be from this. We want to turn this item from the XML file into a view that we then pass to the my view holder so it can be populated with the data. And so this is done through the utility class layout inflator. And so what layout inflator basically does is it turns XML files into view hierarchies. So it'll return a view, what we're doing here. So I can do view equals layout inflator.from. And what from does is it actually returns the layout inflator, which we can then inflate. And what it takes is context as an argument, where context is basically used for newly created objects to basically understand what is being going on. And we use the view group for this. So we would do view group.getContext. And so then from there we can inflate. And so what the first thing we do is we want to pass the ID of our file that we want to inflate. So we'll do r.layout.recyclerview item, because this is right here what we want to turn into a view. And then the next argument you can see is the view group, which we just passed parent. And then finally what we're going to return is false for attached to root, which basically this will make it so the view group that we've passed just basically provides the layout parameter values of the returned hierarchy, and this is only because we made this attached to root false. And so now what this basically means is that we now have a view that has been created from our Recyclerview item that we made, our XML file. So then we'll pass view into here to my view holder. And so that's because my view holder down here takes a view as the argument in its constructor, and then we can find the IDs or find the ImageView and the button that we have in here. And so of course what you should remember is how a view holder only handles one item at a time. And so we are passing the item here, which is the view that we created from our layout file. And so this method does not actually set the view's contents because the view holder is not yet assigned any data. To do this, this is done in the onBindViewHolder method right here. And so before we get into the onBindViewHolder method, what you have to remember is all this functionality is being done by the adapter because we're extending the adapter class here, and these come from it. And you have to remember the adapter binds the view holders to their data by assigning the view holder to a position and then calling this method. And so this is the view holder that we're passing that we created here, and then we have the position, which is basically the position in the list. So in other words, this method uses the view holder's position to determine what the contents should be based on its list position. So here is where we'll actually be setting the view's contents. So for example, you can see here we have, for example, the first one would be Smeagol. So they know that Smeagol is going to be the first one because his position is position 1 or position 0 in the list, whereas Sam would be 2, Boromir would be 3, and so on. And so if you remember, or you see down here, our view holder has both an image view and a button. And so the way we can retrieve these is we would just do holder, because this is holder right here from the image view, and we would do .ImageView. And then so this is how we're accessing the image view here. It's not private, so we don't have to use any getters or setters. And then we can just do set image resource, and then be say drawable, and then whatever background picture you have there. And then the other one we do holder.button, and then we could do set text to be just hello or something like that. And then we can also set a onClickListener for it. So button.set onClickListener, new onClickListener, and then basically this would make it so everything would be the same, and we don't want this. And so what we're going to do is now we're going to create our own custom object so that we can create basically each one of these to be different. So what I'm basically saying is that if we did it like this, every single button in here would say hello, and every single image resource would be the exact same. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, I'm going to create a new class, and I'll just call it character. And so for our character, what we want is we're using a name here. So it's all message, but then we have their name afterwards. So and then we have the picture, of course. And so pictures, what I'm doing is I'm using it by the resource ID, which is an integer. So I could give it two fields called private, let's say int pick num, and then I could do private string name, just like that. And then next I'll do all the getter setters in the constructor. So you can do that with a shortcut by using Alt and Insert, and then you can just create them. So I've made the constructor with everything in it, and then if I just want to make the setters, just select everything again, and then do the same with the getters. So now that we've created our custom object, which is going to be used to show each of these items, what we need to do is we need to create an array list in the adapter to hold this data type. So we're going to go back here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to call private array list, and we're going to make the type to be character for what we just made, and we'll call it characters. And so what you need to remember how the adapter creates views for items and replaces the content of some of the views with new data items when the original item is no longer visible. So that means we need to find a way to pass this data to this adapter, because this is the data that we want to show. And so we need to pass this data so it can be displayed, and the best way to do this is to create a constructor with the array list as an argument so that we can create our adapter and pass the data to it when we create it. So let's just create a constructor right here, and we'll use this, of course, right here, characters. And now we'll use our getters from our character class to retrieve the object, or to retrieve the fields and populate the view holder objects. So remember how onBind view holder fetches the appropriate data and fills in the view holder's layout. So we use this position argument right here to get the appropriate position in the layout from the array list. So it's better to just show you what I mean by this. So we could do set resource, we could do characters dot get, and the index is the position, and then we want to get the pick number. So this will display the image resource. So each of the images will have a different resource number. Like this one could be, say, 23, this could be 33, and so when we set the image resource, depending on the position it is in the array list, that's why the image will be different. And then the next thing we need to do is we're going to set the text, and we're going to do that again by doing characters.get position, so it returns the appropriate character object, and then get name. And then I believe we also said message, so we could say message plus characters.get position.get name. And so now every view holder will have a different position, or a different character, or the different information from a character because of this character's array list here. And then the final thing we need to do, of course, is we need to set it so when you click the button, it says their names. Then we would just do toast. We would make the context, we could do v.getContext, so we can get the context from the view, and then the message will just be invite sent to, and then their name. Just like that. And so now it may look like everything is done, but the last method that we need to do is return ItemgetCount. So right now our Recyclerview would be empty because we are returning 0 objects. And usually what you want to do, so this is basically how many objects you want displayed here. And right now it would just be 0. But what we want is we are populating our array list with characters, and so however big our array list is how many items we want to be displayed, because we want every single thing in the array list to be displayed. So we will just return characters.size. So now that we're done with our adapter, what we should do is we should go to main activity, where we will actually run the program. And so I'm just going to declare all the reference variables and objects that were going to be needed to actually run the Recyclerview. And so the first thing, of course, is we need an array of characters. So I'm just going to do array list of characters, and just call it characters equals new array list. The next thing we need is we need a Recyclerview and an adapter. So we can do Recyclerview just like this. And so next we need our adapter. So what ours is called is my adapter, and just set it like that. And then something that we do need is, so adapters are only responsible for creating and managing views for items. They don't actually decide how these views are arranged when displaying them. So instead, what the Recyclerview relies on to basically orient these items is a layout manager. So what we're going to need is a layout manager, and we'll just call it layout manager. And so an example is for layout managers, you can see in here, everything is just linear. It's all on top of each other. So one item. We could have a layout manager where it's a grid layout. So we could have, say, a cell here and one here, but we're just doing it in a linear layout. So it's just one on top of the other. And so now let's just link everything. So the first thing we need to do is let's do our Recyclerview and link it by its ID. So r.id. I believe I named it rvlist. And so this is just the Recyclerview that we have here to hold all these items. now that we have our Recyclerview linked, the next thing we need to do is you can use something called the method setHasFixedSize and set that to true. And basically what this is used is it's used to improve performance if you know changes in the content do not change the layout size. And so all our items are going to be statically sized. They're not changing or anything. So we can set this to true to improve efficiency. So now let's actually create our layout manager. So you can see we have layout manager equals new. Let's do linear layout manager. And I believe it takes context, which we'll just do this. And so we basically know that the adapter is used to populate the array list or populate the Recyclerview, and then we need the layout manager to actually say how we want things arranged. So we would do Recyclerview.set layout manager, and we would do our layout manager. And so now we need to make our adapter. And so of course this is the class myAdapter here. And remember, to make this we actually have a constructor where we have to pass an array list of characters, which is this custom object that we made here. And so we can just say we can do myAdapter equals new myAdapter, just like this. And now let's create the array list of characters. So to populate this array list, we would just do characters.add, and then we would add a new character. And I remember the first thing was the pic number and then the string name. And so let me just show you how I'm getting these images from online. So what I'm doing to get these images and making it into a number is the number is actually the drawable ID. So if you go here and you see drawable, this is where I'm adding my my images. And so to do that, what you will do is you can just right click and say show in Explorer, and it opens up here. And then just go to the internet and say, let's say I want to download or get the image of Frodo. Choose anyone. Let's just choose this one here. And I'm just doing save image as. Just call it Frodo. Save it in the downloads. Now you can navigate back to your resources that you opened up here, go to downloads, get the image, cut it, and just paste it into drawable. Place it into this drawable folder right here. Now go back into Android Studio, go to the main activity, and you can see we have now in drawable, we have Frodo.jpg. And so what we can do is r.drawable.Frodo. And then the next thing is just the name, and Frodo, just like that. And so now we've got one object, and then basically I just repeated this process with all the other characters. And so now that I've added all the characters, what I will do is I will just add this array list to my adapter like this. And then the final thing we need to do is we've set the layout manager, so how we want to actually arrange the items, and now we just need to set the adapter, which is my adapter, just like this. And so this is the whole project. So we've got everything up and running, and so all we need to do now is just run it and see what it looks like. And you can see here we are. So we have each of the items. Everything is not the right size because I guess we did for ImageView fit content. You can see it smoothly scrolls. So if I want to fix this, what I would have to do is I would have to go to the item and say, let's just make the width to some static numbers. So let's do 100 pixels, or let's do 300 pixels for the width and the height. And then let's also make the button a static size. So let's do a width of say 500 pixels. Now let's try and run it again. And there we go. You can see we have it. Everything's the right size now. And then just a quick example is also say I wanted to add more characters or add more to this Recyclerview. All I would have to do is just go to main activity and say I paste in all this again. And now let's run the application again. And you can see now that it's even longer. So you can scroll and you can see you have the characters are duplicated, but you can see we can basically just keep adding to the Recyclerview and make it bigger and bigger. And then one last thing is just check the message, invite sent to Sam. So this is my Recyclerview video using Java. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.